Alright guys, so just wanted to come in with a quick little PvP breakdown on how I do things and then give you a little bit of a walkthrough. So, granted there's a 15 million difference between the two of us, but essentially wanted to go through my skill rotation and see if that plays well for you a little bit. Um, Already discussed my updates on this class and not much has changed since the last time, um, but I feel like I could have elaborated a little bit more on my basic skill rotation and the reason why I do things the way that I do. Um, so, diving into this, um, this is my basic bar down here at the bottom right. This is what I keep on during guild balls. This is what I keep on while I'm running my dailies and stuff like that. And it's just the three I say three basic skills because one of them is actually going to be a buff um, to kind of counterbalance the effects of one of these. So, in any engagement that I go into, whether it's ancient boss or guild boss, um, solo bosses, whatever, I am always starting out with Blessing of the Dark. Yes, this is going to cut my attack speed and my movement speed by a lot, um, but that's okay because it is stacking burn damage or applying burn stacks with every time that I hit. Um, as you can see, unbuffed, my attack speed is at 562, and I want to say that it cuts it by 80%, just because I don't have the um, extra two skill points that we'll be able to unlock later in the game. So yeah, cuts. Let's see, your attack speed is cut by 80%, movement speed by 80%, and it lasts for 3 seconds. For 3 seconds, the target's damage is cut by 75%, and every attack inflicts a stack of the burning effect. So every time that I hit this boss or hit this player, it is stacking burn, which, as you all know, for strength Dark Lords, that is your bread and butter. If you don't have burn stacks, you're not doing damage. Um, but once we go from here with only having two skill points invested, and then we get to the point to where we have those two additional skill points, it'll allow me to carry this up for an additional 1 second of that increased skill duration. So it'll carry on a little bit more, applying more burn stacks for a second. Um, and then once we hit level 4, it's going to, instead of cutting my attack and movement speed by 80%, it's going to cut it by 60%. So I'm still able to hit a little bit faster, still able to do a lot more damage at that point, and I can move around a little bit more freely. So the way that I engage in any of the things that I'm doing is, again, always leading with Blessing of the Dark. Then I'll swap over and I'll hit Royal March, which what this is going to do, and we can go back into our skills, um, is it is going to give us an increase in our movement speed by 20%, um, within a 3 meter radius. So it's going to allow us to kind of jump out of the way of incoming attacks from, let's say, AGI Dark Wizards and all of their poison that they'd like to throw around. And it's going to increase our evasion chance by 10%. But if you also look down, since I do have this maxed, it's going to give us an extra 2 seconds to work with this. Um, and it's also going to give us an additional 20% once we have it maxed, and an additional 10%. So that's 20% of evasion off of one skill and 40% movement speed. That is crazy. So right there, that almost mitigates all of the Blessing of the Dark once we're able to get it maxed out. So instead of 60% of my attack decreasing, it's going to be 40, or not 40, but 20%. Um, and then same with the movement speed, which I don't think that the movement speed changed. I think it was just the attack. So even with my movement speed cut um, by 80%, having that little bit that's coming from Royal March is definitely going to help out in being able to kind of avoid some of that on top of the evasion. Um, and then after that, I'll end up popping Blessed Shield, and that will kind of give me a little bit of a barrier. And we can go back in here and look at this. I know, I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around all over the place. Um, go back in with Blessed Shield, and what this is going to do is it's going to give you a little bit of a buffer before it starts affecting your um, your HP decreasing. So after casting, applies barrier within 4 seconds, stacked twice. Incoming damage or incoming attacks from the enemies removes 1 stack each and restores 4% of your HP. So if you have a ton of HP, yeah, 4%, can add up a little bit just to be able to kind of start procking some of that health recovery, kind of getting yourself built up a little bit so that you can prepare for the next wave of attacks that are going to be coming your way shortly after. And here's another thing. So having at least one level of Mark of the Beast grants every stack of barrier additional 4% of the damage reduction effect. So now, on top of getting back that little bit of HP recovery, we're also building up on that damage reduction and keeping our barrier around a little bit longer. But it's also consuming um, that mark, and it resets the remaining time for the mark. So as you start acquiring marks, this is going to take one, it's going to refresh it, and keep on putting yourself in that loop. So it does wear away. It's not something that's going to last forever and you're going to be invincible to everybody. But it does give you that time to kind of set up and start following through with your skill rotation. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more. So, again, starting off with Blessing in the Dark to get our burn stacks going, apply Royal March to mitigate some of that attack speed and the movement speed, and kind of bring us back up to where we can actually kind of move a little bit quicker. Then we're popping Blessed Shield, take in those incoming attacks. Then we're popping Cracked Earth. I want to say that that's what that's called. Should be, yeah, Cracked Earth. So this is what's nice, is it stuns 3 nearby targets, and it damages them at the same time. So we've got damage rolling in. Um, we've got stuns happening, and then if you're having at least 2 levels of Mark of the Beast, it stuns the enemy for an additional 1.5 seconds. So you could end up keeping these guys locked down um, for, I don't know, 2, 3 seconds. That's a lot of time to do a lot of damage. And with being any variant of a Dark Lord, that's huge, because everybody knows that we're a squishy class. Um, so now, as we start looking into what I use for my PvP rotation, and this is going to be something that is going to always be changing because I'm always playing around with it. Um, but hopefully, it's something that can help you, and that is going to be this setup. Now, I play a little bit backwards, so normally when you go into an engagement and you switch over to your battle mode, um, starts with slot 1. I like to work from slot 2. I don't know why. And then I switch back to slot 1. Um, and I think the main reason is because if I hop into a plunder, I want to make sure that my slot 1 skills have not been touched yet. So that way, once I make it through the rotation of my slot 2 skills, then I can already be set up for my burst damage. Um, so here's what I'll do. So you go into a plunder, you go into a castle siege, you go into a chaos castle, uh, or go into arena. For us, it was supposed to unlock at level 420. Uh, we have yet to see that, and I just opened Kundun Seal, and today was our first day going through the dungeons. So who knows when that's coming? I find that very disheartening, especially for somebody that has put a lot of time and money into this game. I hate to have stuff restricted for me when I was promised it at a certain level. But that's another soapbox for another day. Um, so going into these heavier, more PvP focused environments, again, still starting off with Blessing of the Dark, though you don't see Royal March on this skill board. It is going to be a buff that's going to be at the top left of your screen, so you'll be able to hit that to be able to mitigate that and continue right along. So then what I'll do is pop my Blessed Shield. That does get my barrier going, gets my damage reduction going, prepares myself for some of those incoming attacks. Then I throw in Soul Shock, which inflicts direct skill damage. It does that on multiple targets. I'm not sure how many off the top of my head. I'll have to go back into the skills and look. Um, and then I follow that up with Cracked Earth. Again, the reason for Cracked Earth is you turn around as you're going through. You've already got your Blessing of the Dark procced. You've got your Barrier procced. You've thrown out um, skill damage on quite a few players. Now it's time to stun them up. So Cracked Earth gets them going, and then we'll go back and then we will throw out Heaven's Punishment, which again, this is where my burst starts coming through. So now all of my defensive skills have popped. I've got a little bit of time to play around with. So Cracked Earth, as soon as it goes, I'm switching back to slot one and just just spamming in a row, going clockwise. Heaven's Punishment. This is going to get um, that direct skill damage on one target, um, and then it moves up to Ignite, which kind of feeds off of that Blessing of the Dark. Um, so it inflicts an enormous amount of direct skill damage on three nearby targets by exploding dark flames. I just realized that I was reading off of those little skill tips right there. Didn't realize that was there. Um, but it inflicts an enormous amount of direct skill damage on three nearby targets. So this is taking an account for all the skill damage that you have built up, and this is applying that to those three targets. So it's almost like an agility dark wizard with their explosion skill. So it does massive amounts of damage to whomever is around. Um, and then we follow that up with Wild Blow. So it's damaging that target that you're going up against, um, and it's applying burn chance as you're going. So because again, a big thing is to keep those burn stacks flowing as much as we can. Um, and then we've got for our final skill, Holy Eruption. This is this is just throwing out and just providing additional damage on the back end. Again, this works out really well for me. Um, Normally, regardless of me having to go through and manually press all of these skills versus a lot of the other classes being able to go in and just hit auto and then kick back and relax and eat a sandwich, we do still have skills that are proccing in the background. Um, these are just the main ones that we want to prioritize as we're playing. Again, uh, this is the way that I like to play it do not feel like you have to do this yourself. But again, I will start off with Blessing of the Dark. I'll come up here to the top left. I'll hit my Royal March, come back, and then I will throw on Bless Shield. And then it's coming down to, what is that one? Soul Shock. Um, and then shortly after Soul Shock is procced, I am throwing on Cracked Earth, then Heaven's Punishment, and then Ignite, Wild Blow, and then wrapping it up with Holy Eruption, and then I start the process all over again. So it's just rinse and repeat at that point. Typically, your main skills here are going to have a much longer cooldown, so you can run through this whole cycle and then focus back in on these four on slot one. Primarily, what you'll see is a lot of ignites and then a lot of wild blows, um, just because they have the lower cooldown. So please keep all that in mind. But it also plays a bit on how Dark Lord's stats are set up. So what we can do is we can take a look at my stats. So when it says it's applying direct skill damage, this is a lot of damage going on. So my skill damage is increased by 520%, decreased by about the same. My damage increases up 461.9. In PvP, it's up 20.78, and I find that to be just because of the set that I'm running with, and then my inability to acquire some of those core set pieces. But again, this has a lot of utility going on with it as far as the stats go that really play a factor in how these skills are going to be performing. So just bear in mind that if it's something that's not working for you, reach out to me, let me know. We can potentially work through this and get you where you need to be without really putting you too far back. But with that being said, I hope that this video was informative. If you guys need anything at all, please let me know. And with that, I am Delusions, and I am out.